She is one of our extraordinary instructional designers. And so any of you that might have touched the MOOC or seen the MOOC will know that she's contributed to that. So she's sort of an expert in terms of bringing things into the online space and how to make them interactive. She's also the person I go to for most Canvas-based questions in terms of design. So you're in excellent hands. And also this is something that she's given outside of OTL to broader groups of faculty. So, you know, don't hesitate with questions because in all likelihood she has answers. But yeah, she's excellent and a little bit awkward, which is always our favorite thing. So take it away, Diane.
Thanks for not overselling it. So yes, I am Diane Maurer. I've been with OTL for about 1.5 years. Before that, I was at Texas Women's University for 10 years. So I am, I'm located in Texas. And in 6 weeks, I won't be with OTL anymore anyway. So if this is the first time you've ever seen me, don't get attached. I told one of my coworkers that I was starting to be very nervous and have imposter syndrome. And she said, well, what do you care what they think? You're going to be gone anyway. And I was like, oh, that's a good point. But it's lovely to see you and meet everybody that I'm meeting for the first time. And I've really enjoyed my time with OTL, but it is time to move on. I mean, I'm getting a new job. I'm not dying or anything. Okay, I will share my screen. I got a thumbs up from Darren.
Looks good.
Okay, welcome to our session on Fast and Furious course design. I'm really interested to know who is more concerned with fast and who's more concerned with the furious part. I guess we'll find out as we go along if you're more furious. So the focus today is really on converting existing face-to-face courses or course components for online delivery in 2 weeks. So it's less about developing a course from scratch and more about taking what you already have and retooling it for an online environment. So I'm going to take you day by day through a process that you can use if you would like to. I'll share the slides and the resources that I'm going to go over with you so that you can put them to practical use in your own time, hopefully. I've got a lot going on here with the slides and the chat and everything. So if someone needs to interrupt me, please feel free to do that. I'm the youngest of 5, so if I'm not being constantly interrupted, you know, I just don't even know how to exist. Okay, so it's a lot to do in 2 weeks to convert a whole class from face-to-face to online, and how to do it is going to take it's a lot to accomplish in 90 minutes. So we're just going to dive straight in. So on day 1, I suggest that, actually, I'm going to stop my video so I can rearrange my this a little bit. So on day 1, you want to take a look at your syllabus. Partly just to frame your thought and focus your mind on the specific course that you're going to be focusing on. And partly because you'll need to revise some of the things in your syllabus. So OTL has a syllabus template that you can use. And everything that I'm going to talk about related to the syllabus, I'm going to refer to certain sections of the OTL template. So pulling over the template now, if you go up to view and make sure that show document outline is checked, you'll be able to really quickly navigate through this template based on the areas that the slides are referring to. once you're actually putting this into practice. So you also want to scrub your syllabus for your face-to-face language. And if you have been teaching for many, many years and you haven't really taught online very much, sometimes it's difficult to key in on that language when you're reading it. So I'm going to go over some of that stuff as well. And one easy way to do that is to use Control F or Command F to search for words that you typically use to refer to your face-to-face components. So if you're referring to lecture, if you're referring to the class or the classroom, in class, IC, stuff like that, whatever terms you use to refer to your face-to-face course components, if you search for those terms, it might help point you to some of that face-to-face language that needs to be revised. So this is mainly going to be under the course information that you want to add some kind of getting started plan. So in your face-to-face syllabus, you probably had, references to your physical classroom locations, to specific dates and times of class meetings. In an online space, it's going to be really important to include time zones if you don't already do that. As I said, I'm in Texas, so it's only 9 o'clock here. And I don't know how many times I have registered for a webinar and shown up in the last 10 minutes because it didn't note the time zone, and I didn't key into, oh, that organization is based in New York, so of course it's going to be on Eastern time. So including time zones can be really helpful since, in an online classroom, we can be anywhere. So, so you want to give students some idea of where to get started. And that can be just as simple as saying, this course is going to be delivered 100% online through Canvas. If you're going to use some courseware like My Finance Lab, you can list that in that area as well. If you're going to have mandatory or optional live sessions in Zoom, you can note when those will be. Okay, so your online communication plan, again, you may have had references in your original syllabus to your office phone number, your office physical location, language about dropping in before or after class, or, just come down to the front of the room after class and we can talk about things. In the face-to-face class, you don't have that kind of impromptu ability to bump into students. So you want to add some language to your syllabus about your plans for communication. So how will you interact with learners? How should they interact with each other? What's the best way to contact you? How often are you planning to send announcements? Or are you more likely to send them class-wide emails through Canvas inbox? Just letting students know what to expect, basically. And include some guidance on netiquette as well. So the syllabus template in Drive that I showed you, and which is also linked on this on these slides, will include some language about netiquette that you can use and augment as needed. So again, those can be very simple statements just to say, the best way to contact me is by email. If they need to add certain information to the subject line of the email. I've even seen some instructors who will give a sample message in the syllabus to say, this is an example of a professional email that a student could send to me. That models for students what your expectations are about how you want to be addressed, how they should sign their emails, all of those kinds of things.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's say you are emailing with a student and you want to CC, for example, an outside book rep or something that could answer their questions. Is it advisable to not use the Canvas email, or how can you make sure somebody CC can see the previous history if it's done if it's done through Canvas?
So I believe if you have your notifications set properly in Canvas, you'll get notifications about those messages to your email. And so if you have it set to right away, your email history, your message history should be included within that thread. So you could CC them from your Google email inbox as opposed to from the Canvas inbox. Does that make sense?
I'll double check my settings. It's just sometimes like if I CC a book rep, they can't see the previous Canvas email that the student had sent me. So I can do this outside of this just to make, but it sounds like my settings aren't appropriate.
We can look at those in a little bit too.
Okay, that's
one of the things to consider though is that I might prefer not to have the whole thread included, and rather to say, dear so-and-so, I'm emailing you to connect you with this rep to talk about the issue, just as an over precaution to make sure that nothing else within that email thread that the book rep doesn't need to see isn't included in that thread anyway. So that's another thing to consider.
right. Thanks.
No problem. Next, kind of related to your online communication plan is your feedback plan. So if you are used to typically returning work or returning feedback at class time or the following class day, you might need to change that language to something else that's more conducive to the online environment. And since this is a business school, you might even use business days instead of hours to communicate that time frame to students as well. So you might say that I'll respond to emails within 24 hours, except holidays and weekends. And also let them know, in addition to when they can expect a response from you about messages, when they can expect to receive grades and feedback on their assignments. So it might be 3 days for shorter assignments and small quizzes, 5 days for longer assignments. And you can provide those kinds of guidelines within your syllabus as well. And then more generally, just revisit your course policies. Look for references, for example, in your attendance policy to tardiness or lateness or absence from class. If you're teaching online, especially if you're teaching asynchronously online, those would not be quite so relevant. So think about what you would consider to be attendance in an online environment and add a description in your syllabus about that. So you might say something like, this is a fully online course. We're not going to take attendance in a traditional sense, but make sure that you're logging into Canvas 2 to 3 times a week to keep up with announcements, discussions, and interactions, whatever. So think about those kinds of things. If you have an in-class technology use policy, you can probably just delete that because they'll need to use technology even if you're having synchronous sessions, they'll still need to use technology. You can talk to them about, attention and participation, but the use of technology is pretty much required. Or other classroom behavior guidelines that are specific to face-to-face instruction. And then also consider including or revising a late work policy and makeup exam policies. And I'm kind of curious about this one, how people are dealing with those 2 policies specifically, especially at Smith. So you can respond in the chat or you can turn on your microphone. But I'm curious about how your course policies have changed since March, or what course policy changes you're considering for fall. Or if anybody from OTL wants to share their own recommendations. Everybody seems quiet today. It's because I was giving people time to respond in the chat. I wasn't talking is the reason you couldn't hear me. Okay, so if you're, okay, so I'm just catching up in the chat for what Deborah has posted. With feedback on deadline deliverables being quick, it's impossible for me to accept late deliveries. So I'm making no changes to deadlines needing to be met for credit on deliverables to be earned. You know, I think that that's a legitimate concern. Yeah, especially if you teach in an accelerated format. Some universities have like Maymester and Wintermester courses that are 2.5 weeks long, and it would be really difficult to have a lax late policy because of that.
Can I just say, you
Yeah.
in an earlier slide, you said that feedback would be given, I think, within 48 hours or maybe 5 days. I don't know.
That was
But
just
I tend to do pretty instantly. And so anyone who hands in something late has the answers to whatever was being graded, which those who were on time didn't have. So
Right.
that's why it's not the length of my course. It's the fact that they get feedback pretty instantly. Sometimes, in fact, during the class, that it's impossible for me, in order to be fair to everybody, to take any late deliverables. And every deliverable is on the syllabus. So they have months to prepare, it seems to me. So I don't, maybe I'm being too harsh, but I'm not planning to change any of that.
I mean, I would never suggest that anyone was being too harsh in their policies. I think that you think about your course and you have your policy set for a reason and not arbitrarily. And so, you know, if that works for you and your students, I would say go with it. The only concern that we've had more recently is just with the pandemic and with people's situations being different, and if that student gets sick, or you know, if a family member gets sick, there might be some extenuating circumstance. And so just consider in what circumstances you might be willing to make an exception, if at all. It's just a good, when you're switching modalities, it's just a good thing to just to consider and reflect on that.
Yeah, thanks.
Darren says that she added a drop your lowest policy in the summer and will use it again in the fall. And dropping the lowest score, as well as, you know, 1% per hour, you can do that all through automatically through settings in Canvas as well. So if you need to know how to do any of that, hopefully we'll have time to look at that as well. So take a look at your assignments as well. You want to watch for references to how they're submitting their work. If they're, you know, submitting their work in person at the start of class. If you have a late work policy that's, you know, if you don't turn it in class on Tuesday and you turn it in on Thursday instead, or in the next class period, look for references to those kinds of policies. If you have references to in-class group work, consider how those might need to change, especially if you aren't planning on having any synchronous sessions. That would be a difficult thing to do if you have in class when they're not going to be in class. And provide explicit instruction about where and how to complete their assignments. And again, that can just be a very simple statement of that assignments and exams are going to be completed in Canvas and MyLab. And also related to that feedback policy of how your turnaround time for grades, in your grading policy, look for references to grades being distributed in class, and make sure that students know where to go to look at their grades. So if you're going to post everything in the Canvas gradebook, which I strongly encourage you to do, you can add a statement to that effect in the syllabus to say grades will be posted in the Canvas gradebook, or even enter the course and select grades from the course menu to give them more explicit instruction about how to get there. So that's day one. The next couple of days, I encourage you to create a course map. And I have a template that you can use for that. If some other version or formatting works for you, organization works for you, totally fine. But I do have a template available for you to use. But you can create a course map based on your face-to-face class as it is when you teach it face-to-face, and use color coding and other emphasis to help you track what needs to be done or what you might need help with or where your risks might be. So I'm going to pull up that template. And the reason why I've got 2 days for this is because it really is mentally taxing to do this. Every instructor I've ever worked with who's done a course map has said, wow, this is a lot. But once they finish it, they feel like it helped them think about their course in a different way than they typically think about it. So spend a couple days working on your course map. You can add your course objectives, probably just by pasting directly from the syllabus. And then the alignment matrix you can fill in forwards or backwards. So if you already have module or weekly level objectives written in your course, you can fill those in and then fill in your assessments, activities, and materials. If you don't have those written yet, but you do have your assessments and materials already planned out, you can sort of backfill those module objectives in. And remember, whenever you're creating your objectives, that they need to be specific and measurable, and also measured. So if you have a module level objective or a course level objective, but no assignment there, then it's not being measured in the course, and you might need to add another assignment or drop the module objective. So here is an example as well of how you can fill this in. And so you can see I also added an additional annotation for me. This is a course map that I did for Naked and Afraid show celebrity and survivalist Matt Wright, teaching a class on camping basics, basic survival skills. And one of my course objectives is that students will know how to make s'mores. It's kind of silly, but it makes it really easy to have something that simple to see how all of these components work together. So my module objective is to make s'mores. And I've got some, course objective. And I've got some module objectives associated with that. So what are the smaller skills required to make those s'mores? You probably want to be able to list the tools and ingredients required. You probably need to be able to describe the process. You probably need to be able to toast a marshmallow over an open flame without burning it. Or maybe you want to burn it. I'm kind of into the on fire marshmallows. I think that that's what really makes the s'more. So I've got it then also referring to the course objective that it's supporting. You might have more than one course objective being supported by an individual module level objective, which is totally fine. And same for your assessments, activities, and materials. So your assessments are anything in the course that's graded. So assignments, quizzes, exams. Your activities are anything that students are doing that's ungraded. So if they're attending lecture, or if they're watching a lecture video or attending a Zoom session, that would be considered an activity. And then your materials. So if one of your materials is you physically lecturing to students, you would be considered one of those materials. So be very detailed in this process. And you can start to make some annotations there. So if there are certain things that are already up in Canvas, maybe you already have students taking their quizzes in Canvas or completing some of their homeworks in Canvas, you can just strike a line through them. Okay, so you can start to add some emphasis. So if you have something that exists only on a hard copy, like there's a DVD that you used to play in your face-to-face class, you might want to highlight that in some way so that you know that you need to track down either an alternative resource or you need to contact your librarian to try to find a digital version of that content. There might be certain things that you just decide, I really can't do this in an online format, and I'm just going to have to replace this whole activity. Or if you have something like you would normally do face-to-face lectures, now you need to do some lecture capture videos. You know, you can put in bold the things that you need to create from scratch. So that's just an example of how you might go about creating this course map. And so hopefully by the time you're done with this course map, you've got something in every cell that's showing you that your assessments, your activities, and your materials are all working together to support students' ability to master those objectives and to demonstrate to you that they're learning what you want them to learn in your class. Okay, so I have an example here of the measurable and specific learning objectives, which I'm not going to go over in super detail because I think the slide is pretty self-explanatory. So days 4 and 5 then, take your course map that you've completed and focus just on that assessments column. So look at what you need to create in the course, what's already in the course, what you might need to swap out or add. Figure out what is possible in your LMS, which of course is Canvas. And check to see that you're including a variety of different assignment types in the course when possible. Don't add variety just for the sake of adding variety necessarily. But if you can find more creative ways or multiple ways for students to be able to demonstrate to you how they're learning, you know, some students perform really poorly on multiple choice quizzes. Some students perform much better on other types of assessments or assignments. So think about how you can balance active learning and give students multiple ways or multiple opportunities to demonstrate their learning to you. And also, it's always a good idea to include grading criteria. So if you have rubrics that you typically use for grading, you can also populate those within Canvas and use them for grading in Canvas, although that is a pretty tedious process to get them into the Canvas rubrics tool. So just spend some time with your assessments and edit that course map so that you, you know, are removing those things that need to be revised and replaced, and you're winding up with things that need to be created in Canvas. Then you can go into Canvas, go to your assignments page, and just start making the assignments. And the reason I'm suggesting to do this versus going week by week is because once I'm in my Canvas course and I am on the assignments page, I can just start creating assignment after assignment. And if I'm creating the same thing over and over again, it becomes really, really, you know, you form muscle memories, and it becomes a little bit automatic to you what settings you want to use, what due dates you're having, your availability dates. If you know those already, you can start adding those. Versus thinking about the assignments and materials for this week, and then for the next week you're starting all over again, and you kind of have to remember what setting did I use on that quiz. Whereas if you just come to the assignments page or the quizzes page, you can make all of those quizzes, all of those assignments as you go along. And then once you have those indexed here, the way that you give students access to them, you can do in 100 different ways in Canvas. Okay, so another question that I have for you is just in the chat, just with a number, how many individual learning materials do you think that you have in a course typically? So that includes articles, PowerPoint slide decks, worksheets. I see 75 to 100, 125. $45, $50. So some decently large numbers, and certainly multiple materials for each week as opposed to just one each week. Okay, 1,328. Yeah, it's good to be specific. So, so that's why you're going to spend the next couple of days just focusing on your materials. And again, this is going to take place in your course mat document, on your local hard drive, and Canvas, and Panopto. You might look for some external resources. For example, there's really no need to reinvent the wheel. If you can find good content that already exists and is available for you to use under its copyright permissions, then you can use that instead of creating something completely new. So think about how you can chunk your lectures into 5 to 10 minute videos, and I think 10 minutes is even on the high side, to create that content. So which portions do you need to record new videos for? And which portion do you have materials that you can just slide in there from other sources? And again, look to see what kind of variety you're using in those materials. And part of that is, you know, student preferences for the format that they get their materials in, but it's mostly about, you know, making sure that there's diversity of thought and diversity of format within your course to meet the needs of diverse learners. It's also a good time to adopt a file naming structure. So sometimes if you download an article from a database, it'll just be like a 9-digit number for the file name, instead of having, you know, your course prefix and your course number, and then, you know, maybe the author last name, the week that it's going to be read, something like that. But if you start creating a really good file naming convention for yourself and employing that, it's going to be easier for you to find those resources once you're in Canvas, and it's going to be easier for students to recognize those files when they download them from your course. Good file folder structure as well, says John. Correct. And Canvas will let you do that because it's built on a series of index pages. So you have a files area in your Canvas course. If you have your whole course and your files organized on your desktop, you can also just zip up that folder and import the whole thing into Canvas at once. So you don't have to go file by file. If you're looking at documents and things, also, it's a good time to be proactive about accessibility. OTL has a bunch of resources on how to make documents accessible. So I definitely encourage you to do that. And also, if you aren't best friends with your librarian yet, you might want to become so. To help you find the digital versions of things that you only have hard copies for, or replacing materials. Yes. So, and there's a variety of different ways to organize those files in your Canvas course. So sometimes I'll see instructors organize their files by week or by chapter. Sometimes they'll organize them by file type. So they'll put all their PDFs in one folder, all their documents in one folder, things like that. Just whatever makes the most sense for you about how to organize those materials within your Canvas files area is the way to go. So now that you've worked through that, you've built your course map and you've worked through it to figure out how to translate some of these things that you were doing face-to-face into your online course, you want to look for gaps, and these gaps might have existed before, or they might have been created during the process of converting your face-to-face course to online. If you had to drop a certain material, or you had to replace something and it has a gap in the content. So gaps in your course map can tell you a few different things. So I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. So if you're missing a module level objective, but you have materials and activities and assessments, you might be testing students on something that they don't really need to learn in the course, or you might just need to write another module level objective. It could go either way. Spending some time calculating the workload once you've done this also, which is on a future slide, can also be really helpful to determine if you should add something or drop something. But it can be really, really easy when you're developing an online class to think, oh, this class is online, so I can add so much more content to the course. And then you wind up with a course and a half. So you want to be really careful about that. If you have a module level objective, but no assessment, then you need students to learn something, but you're not able to measure whether or not they're learning it. So you may need to add an assignment, or again, you might just need to drop that objective. If you are missing an activity or a material, you might be testing on something that students don't really get introduced to in the course, or don't have an opportunity to practice before they're tested on it. So pay attention to those kinds of gaps and make decisions about how to fill them or how to eliminate the extra weight out of your course. And of course, an instructional designer can help you talk through those kinds of decision making as well. So once you have that course map built, then you have a really strong blueprint for everything that you need in your course. So you've got your activities all created in Canvas. You've gone through your materials and gotten your materials uploaded into Canvas, or identified in your course map document the links to your external resources for some of that content. You may have already started recording some of your lecture videos through Panopto. And then once you have all of those things built, it'll just theoretically take you just a couple of days to put those modules together and put students, put it together in a way that you want students to access it. So modules in Canvas are really just a table of contents that's really quickly linking to all those other areas of your course. So if you've got an assignment that's in your module, it's just linking to that assignment that lives in the assignments index. If you're including those materials that you've uploaded or with your external links to YouTube videos and stuff, rather than add those as attachments directly into the module, I would encourage you to use pages so that you can add context around those materials. Sometimes if you add just the attachment of a document directly into the module, then you have, it's like walking into a classroom, turning on the DVD and walking out. Like, think about what you would say to a student, how you would introduce certain materials or certain assignments or activities to students in your face-to-face class, and add that information to your online class as well, with context around those attachments in a page. And view the course as a student. You have access to the student view of Canvas, and using that is a really, really powerful tool because it can give you a sense of exactly how students are going to see your course, what they have access to, what you have published successfully, where you might have some settings that are interfering with each other. And it's usually my first point of troubleshooting when I'm trying to figure out what's going on in a course. This just happened a couple of days ago where we had created some, we had an assignment that once you scored a certain amount on that assignment, additional content should open up to you. But for some reason, even though the grades were in there, it was not opening. And so the first thing I did was I went into student view to figure out, can students see this? What can I see as a student? Then I went into the grade book, gave my test student a grade, went back to student view, still couldn't see it. So that was my first point of troubleshooting. And then it turned out that I had my course grading policy in the grade book set to manual. And so even though the grades were in there, they hadn't been posted. It was a huge saga that happened in my apartment. But I finally figured it out. So that student view in your course is going to be very, very useful when you're trying to help students find things. Once you've got your modules built, spend a couple of days evaluating your course. Calculate the workload. Again, Rice has a workload calculator for students. Penn State has a nice resource on calculating workload, although I believe this one is focused on undergraduate. But there are some resources out there to calculate your workload and make sure that you're not overloading your course and overloading students, and then by extension, overloading yourself with the amount of grading you might have to do. And again, navigate the whole course in student view. Take a quiz as a student, submit an assignment as a student, then go into gradebook and practice grading them in SpeedGrader. You can really do a lot with that student view. Canvas also has a link validator utility that's really, really powerful. I strongly encourage you to run it every semester or every term, because it'll catch some of those broken links to, a YouTube video that's been taken down, or some resource on a website that the website's been redesigned and the permalink is somewhere else now. So running that link validator in Canvas is going to be very, very helpful to make sure that you're not accidentally linking to something that is not published in the course. And select an evaluation tool or a rubric to look at your online course design as well. So Oscar is one. The QLT rubric, or I call it the quilt rubric, from California State is one that I like a lot, that are freely available to you. If you're an individual subscriber to Quality Matters, because I know we're not an institutional subscriber, you could use the Quality Matters rubric in this case. There are quite a few different ones. If you have a evaluation tool or rubric that you like to use and apply in your courses, you can share those in chat as well. I'm always curious about what additional resources we have. So my next question for you is, if you were a student in an online class, what questions would you have on the first day of that online class? Or if you have taught online, what are some questions you typically get from students regarding first day procedures? And again, I'm going to be quiet for a minute so you can type. Do we need to attend the live session? Yeah, that's a question. Will you record the live session? What if someone walks past my screen? Sure. And not just synchronously, but asynchronously as well. So if you were in a class that wasn't going to have any live sessions, or are we going to have live sessions, might be one of the questions. What happens if my internet is spotty? That's a good one. Maybe, who are you? They might want to know who's teaching the class. What if I don't own a video camera? what if, you know, I'm in some weird time zone that's different, very, very different. I'm on the other side of the world or something. Where are the grades going to be? How should I navigate the course? What order should I do things in? These are all some different kinds. What if I'm sharing a computer with other family members? Sure. And so, so you want to spend a day or so focusing on the first impression that students are going to get of your course and focusing on what they're going to need for the first 2 weeks. So you can create a getting started guide that'll tell students who you are. You can add your picture to your profile in Canvas so that you get your nice, pretty, happy face next to all of your announcements and discussion board posts. Marnie added a question, who do I ask for help? Yeah, where do I go for help? So you can repeat some of those policies from your syllabus and let them know, you know, what areas of the course they're going to access for different purposes. So, you know, grades is going to take you to your grades, and modules is where you're going to access all of your content and assignments. You know, you'll go to the inbox to message me. You can click on help on the global navigation to access different resources. Primarily, you're going to be using the assignments tool and the quizzes tool and discussions. So here are links to how to post a reply to a discussion, how to submit an assignment, links to the privacy policies and accessibility policies for different tools that you're using. If you're going to use Zoom, you know, put a link to the getting started guide for Zoom for how to participate in a Zoom session. So think about all those things that they would need to know on the first day of class. Things that you might tell them in a face-to-face class, and add those kinds of things to your course as well. Give them directions on what to do first in the course to start. So do they need to go read a welcome announcement? Do they need to, you know, go take a syllabus quiz? What do you want them to do to get started? Include those technology resources, links to the help desk. Let them know who to ask for help. So what questions should they ask you, and what questions should they ask the service desk? Are you going to troubleshoot Canvas for them? Are you, you know, what things can you help with versus where do they need to go for other things? And anticipate some of those questions. Maybe build an FAQ page. Maybe give them, I lost my train of thought. Give them a course questions discussion board where they can post questions about the course and everybody gets access to the benefit of those responses. I've seen people put in scavenger hunts in their course to get them to engage and explore the course and read the syllabus and take a quiz about the syllabus, so that you can have a specific question in the syllabus about what your late work policy is, to help make sure that students aren't missing that important information. Revisit your syllabus again based on the work that you've done in your course map and what you've added to your course in Canvas. You might need to make a few more adjustments to your course schedule or other areas of your syllabus, so finalize that and post it. And double check the content and settings for the first 2 weeks. So even if you don't get all of your modules built, if you've got your first 2 weeks set and ready to go, you can keep building out ahead of where the students are. So, you know, they might be on week 5, but you're still building week 10. And that's not the ideal feeling that you want to have as an instructor, I know, but sometimes that's where we're at, you know. A previous institution I worked at, I would have adjuncts call me and say, well, I just got a course, I don't have access to Blackboard yet. And the first day of the semester was 3 days ago. You know, there's all kinds of situations we find ourselves in as instructors. So double check your content and your settings. And again, use the student view. Shula out. Sorry, I had to yell at my dog to get out from underneath my desk because she always unplugs my monitors when she's under there. Visit your course settings. Modify your course navigation and your course details page and revisit some of those settings. There may be settings that you want to change based on having an online course versus a face-to-face course. And I have so if you go to your course menu, click on settings, there's a setting that hides from you. And I don't understand why they would hide it, but they do. If you scroll all the way down, there's a link to more options, and more options gives you the ability to, let students organize their own groups. So you want to check and see, do you want students to be able to organize their own groups? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But some of these settings are very, very important. Another one that you can consider turning on is showing recent announcements on your course homepage. I like to set this to 1, just so the most recent announcement is right at the top of the homepage whenever they first get in. If it's any more than that, it bumps down your course banner and all of that stuff to below the fold, and they have to scroll a lot more. But I think it's really helpful to have at least the first one or the most recent one. You also have the ability to turn on or off the comments on announcements. So you can use your announcements to drive some interaction and engagement in your course as well. So you can ask them to comment on an announcement with an answer to some question, or give them the opportunity to comment, which will help you know when students are reading your announcements and making sure that they understand what's happening. So explore those. And then also visit your navigation tab up at the top and think about what you want students to have access to. If there's any tools in here that are available that students aren't going to use, if there's something on the course menu that you're like, well, I didn't even know what that is, you're probably not using it in your course. So think about what to show or hide. The horror story that I usually share for this is that my husband, when he was in grad school, first of all, it gives me an opportunity to say my husband, because we just got married in December and we're not divorced yet. So I feel like we're doing okay. It's to give you an opportunity to, when he was in grad school at another university, not at Smith, his instructors in one of his classes had the files item on the course menu open and available to students. And they didn't know that students had access to that area when it was turned on in the course. So the students in the course had access to like the instructor versions of the PowerPoints, the answers to all of the team-based learning activities, just all kinds of stuff that the instructor did not know they had access to and did not want them to have access to. So typically I would encourage you to hide pages and files from students for those reasons of just, not having access to every single thing that you have in the course. But there also may be perfectly legitimate reasons to show those to students. It could completely depends on your course design. Some instructors like to have assignments showing, some like to disable it. If you have everything that they need within your modules, you might not need to have that assignments page showing. They'll still be able to access through the syllabus tool and all of that stuff, through their course calendar. They have a variety of ways to access their assignments. And you may want to try to push them towards accessing their assignments from the module so you know that they're looking at the content. That's another thing that I see happen a lot, is that if students can go just straight to the assignments page and start doing the assignments, they might completely skip over your lecture content and just, you know, try to check off their boxes. I see that all the time on analytics that shows students' page views. And it's like, well, they're doing the assignments, but they haven't even looked at your lecture at all. So consider those kinds of things as you're thinking about how you want navigation to be set up. And the other reason to augment your navigation settings is just to keep things simple and not distracting for students, to make it really clear to them what areas of the course and what tools are going to be used and which ones aren't. I've seen people who will have this was for a face-to-face class, but all they had open was the syllabus, and they used the calendar tool in very thoughtful ways, so that students were able to, with the syllabus and the course summary that comes along with the syllabus page, they were able to, you know, navigate and do their entire course right from that single page. So I challenge you to figure out the fewest possible items you need to have available on your course menu. It's a fun game to play. I'll frequently just have these. So home, announcements, syllabus, modules, grades, and people. You can run your whole course with just those 6. Okay, and this is the part where you can also revisit your notification settings. So if you go into account and notifications, this is where you would have that setting for your inbox for setting that for right away. You'll have a few different columns here. If you have additional email addresses associated with your Canvas account, if you have the mobile app installed on your smart device. So you'll probably want to make sure that those conversation settings are set to right away. As you hover over these, it'll tell you what each setting means. And then as you go through and decide what you want to be notified about, think about students also having access to a notifications page and what notifications students might need in order to be most successful in your course. And you can add a statement in your Getting Started guide about that as well, to say, I'm going to use the announcements tool frequently. You'll get one announcement at the start of every week, plus another announcement, you know, in the middle of the week. And then if anything important happens, I'll send an announcement. So you might want to have your announcements notifications set to daily or right away. You might want to encourage them toward having, if you have a discussion heavy course, encourage them toward having their discussion-based notification settings set to, you know, daily summaries to keep them engaged in the course that way. And again, if you haven't yet, which I have not, you can go into your profile and add your profile picture. And again, if you want students to add that personal touch and to have a little more social presence in the course, you can encourage students to go into your Canvas profile and add your profile picture and set that up the way that you need it to be. And again, I'm gonna say again, use the student view. Go in as a student, navigate your whole Getting Started section and the first couple weeks of your content from start to finish as a student, and really get to know what the student experience is going to be in that course. And think about where you might need to add a little bit more context. So one place that I've seen that is in the modules. If you have text headers and you're using text headers in the modules, when students are navigating the module by clicking the next button, they don't get the benefit of whatever that text header says. So if your text header is saying, you know, read the following articles on X, students navigate modules in the way that Canvas has built them to be navigated, they're going to miss that in that part of the instruction. So really go through it with your student hat on and make sure everything makes sense. I would imagine that maybe an instructional designer would also be happy to take a look at your course and some of the settings. I know I've had faculty in the past who have said, oh, they've got a quiz this week 1. Could you just pop into that quiz and make sure that the settings are doing this, this, and this? And then, you know, we can kind of double check those settings and make sure that your Canvas course is doing the things that you want it to do. Okay, and then day 14, after those breezy 2 weeks that you've had up to this point, again, focusing on those first 2 weeks on the previous day means that you can keep building the course out after it's been published. But you can post a welcome announcement so that when the course opens, it'll go out to students right away to let them know that the course is published and available. You can let them know how excited you are to have them in the class. You can let them know, you know, again, what to do to get started. If they need to go log into the course and start the getting started section, you can add some instructions in that welcome announcement as well. And then publish the course. And in Canvas, that's easy to do. It's on the homepage. You just click publish, and it goes. And so that's your 2-week turnaround for your face-to-face to online adventure, 0 to 100% online in 14 days. So a lot of instructors who have not taught online before, you know, will ask for online teaching tips. So if you've taught online before and you have some teaching tips that you want to share, go ahead and share those in chat, or you're also welcome to turn on your microphone and interrupt me and talk. But I would encourage you to be consistent. So however you're formatting your pages, format all your pages that way. If you use bold as emphasis on one page, use bold as your emphasis on your other pages. If you follow a certain order within your modules, try to stick to that order in every module so that the learning environment and the technology kind of fades into the background, and students can really focus on what they need to be learning in the class. And especially now, be flexible. And that's partially about that technology fails. Technology fails, it fails all the time. My internet went down this morning and I didn't think I was going to be able to make this session. I was terrified. So be flexible and learn to, you know, roll with it when technology happens. Be present in the course, your social presence and personal presence and having your personality come through in your course really helps students feel connected to you and connected to each other, and helps to create a community. And be forgiving, not necessarily of the students, although I do encourage it, but be forgiving of yourself, especially when you're first getting started. We all didn't know how to ride a bike at some point. You start at a place and then you grow from there. And it's okay when you're first starting to teach online to be yourself and do your best. And every semester just make small improvements and just adopt a model of continuous improvement to say, this isn't something that I can tackle this semester, but maybe for next term, I'll think about using this other tool or, you know, doing something in this other way. Model failure and resilience. This is one of my favorite things to encourage people to do because failure is a part of learning. If students don't see your messy, cluttered background behind you, that's okay. But also, if you do let them see that you have a stack of laundry baskets behind you, it humanizes you. It lets them know that they're okay, you're okay. But you can model failure, and you can let them know, oh, we had this problem with the quiz last night because I missed this particular setting. I fixed it, you know, everything's going to be fine. No one's going to get penalized for it. And just try to be transparent with them about what's going wrong and how it's being fixed. And seek support from OTL. If there are hashtags that you follow on Twitter, get on Twitter. There are some good online pedagogy groups on Facebook that you can join. You can follow me on Twitter if you want. I'm totally open to that. So just consider those kinds of things. So Darren, do we have any notable tips in the chat that you want to share?
Well, we had millions of lots of ideas that people are taking away and people are going to try. And so maybe that would be one good thing. Do you want to pop each of you just one thing in the chat that you might try or that you took from this or that you're going to dive in and try? I know that for me, I know as soon as I heard about standardizing the file names, I was like, ooh, that is the thing that I have not done. And I know it's going to make such a big difference. So that's sort of my action step leaving today. So if you want to just pop those in, and then Diane, did you want me to share them out or are you happy to do that?
I'm happy to do that. Yes. And we also have time. So if there's anything that I mentioned that you'd like me to demonstrate in Canvas, or if there's anything that, you know, you're not sure how to word something in your syllabus, I'm happy to talk through those kinds of things as well. James says that he's going to look at changing his Canvas settings. And it's good just to know what settings are available. I think that settings page gets missed a lot.
And Liz, I think it absolutely is okay. I know I've had my cat walk across my screen. I know I've spilled things. So yeah, I totally second what Diane is sharing about letting yourself be human. I think pretending that we can replicate like this exact perfect screen and authority actually just makes everything harder for you and for your students.
Can I ask a question? Okay, yeah. First of all, thanks so much to Diane for this wonderful presentation. I learned a lot. I'm curious about what, because I will be teaching online for the first time, and I would love to hear from other people's experience and OTL's advice on recording the live class sessions. So I plan to have like 60% synchronous and 40% asynchronous content. And for the synchronous session, I would, for my undergraduate class, I would like to have a lot of just interactive discussions. One concern I have with recording those sessions is people, first of all, they may, not even want to show their faces. And secondly, they may not feel as free to share their thoughts and have a truly interactive discussion. So I'm wondering, for people who have taught online, have you been recording most of your live sessions or not? And what were students' reaction? I can see the reason for recording those sessions being making them available to students who, for a variety of legit reasons, could not attend the class, but still wanted to know what was going on. So I'm curious to hear from OTL for your advice and from everybody else who has taught online. Thank you.
Yeah, Darren, I think OTL has some specific recommendations about that. Do you want to?
Yes, right. If you could share with me, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's sort of a difficult thing, right? If you know that you have a huge amount of international students, of course, I'd probably recommend that you do record it. But I can tell you that personally, I did stop recording my sessions. Now with that, exactly what Diane had shared about being flexible became more important. Because if I was going to offer live sessions during a global pandemic, as it was in the beginning of the summer, then I was going to need to make sure that there was sort of an allowance for the fact that students might need to make up something about that session. So for example, if I ran a breakout room activity, if I did sort of an in-class assignment, I made sure there was a parallel discussion that they could contribute to. So that was one thing that I did, because I found that once I stopped recording, the students were more at ease. And if I'm, to be totally honest, I'm more at ease myself if I know that I'm not having to manage the recording also. Also, there's a lot of research that, if you're teaching for, let's say, an hour or an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half, it's a very long time to have a video extend for. So generally speaking, it wouldn't have a high watching rate. So that sort of would be my recommendation. But again, ask your students, right? When you start that first session, don't record that first session, and just ask them, what do they feel comfortable with? Are they more likely to participate? Are they worried that they're going to have to miss a lot of sessions? And then you'll get a sense of who your group is and what works for them.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And so suppose we record, and I think my inclination would be probably not to record most of the live sessions for the reasons you mentioned. But in case for a couple of classes with really technical content, and I want to leave a record for those who couldn't attend to really study the materials, follow the logic of the development with some of the methodologies. How big so could, actually, Diane, if you don't mind showing us, so I would need to do it within Zoom on Canvas, right? But when you record it, you still record it on your local computer and later on upload the files, right? Because Jaren, thanks for sharing those files. I actually quickly checked both of them out. So that's how you do it. And then I'm wondering, in terms of file size for, let's say, a 75 minutes class, how big the file might be, and how long does it take to actually get that file uploaded to Canvas? And also, in terms of video quality, should we turn on or off the HD recording setting within Zoom? Thank you.
I mean, that's going to depend a lot on factors that can change from day to day and minute to minute, right? Like it can depend on just how Canvas feels that day, how your internet is going that day. It might take longer or shorter amount of time for that video to upload and process. Typically, the Zoom recordings aren't going to be huge because they're already, they're not being recorded at 30 frames per second. They're being recorded at 10 or 15, probably, maybe sometimes 5. So there shouldn't be a huge problem, but at the same time, if you're, it kind of depends on what internet service you have. It kind of depends on weather. It kind of depends on who else is using the internet in your house. A lot can affect that. But once the Zoom videos are uploaded, the size of a video that was uploaded shouldn't necessarily affect students' ability to stream it. So if it's a much larger file, it should still process and stream for them, at relatively the same rate. I think Teresa and Garrett can correct me if that is incorrect.
Yeah, and I would remind you of one step at the beginning, which is if you're teaching something that you consider to be heavy, necessary, important content, I would probably actually record that just yourself. So not really in a Zoom session with other people, but that would be an optimal thing to be asynchronous content. And there's 2 big pluses. One is it'll go up online and the students will be able to work through it at their own pace. They can revisit it if there's something that's unclear. And additionally, it's a benefit to you because if it's a really important piece of content, and I know this because when I teach my future teachers, the theories are the things that I revisit every single time. If you make that asynchronous, you can use that again in your class. You can use that again for instruction. You can use that again in a session. And so that's one thing that I would highly recommend. So if you're recording asynchronously, you don't have to use Zoom. You can use Panopto in Canvas. And what's great about that is that OTL has excellent support for Panopto, but additionally you can enable auto captioning. And so that sort of skips a very important step for you, especially given that maybe people for whom English is not their first language, or even people like me for whom American English isn't their first language, people who have trouble with accents and things like that, you can have Panopto do the auto captioning for that purpose. So
thank you so much. Somebody's knocking at the door. I have to take.
Go, absolutely go.
So one thing that I would add to that is to think about, you know, it's not necessarily just for students who weren't in the session, but students who were in the session might want to repeat viewings of certain aspects of the class that they didn't understand, just to help them understand better if it went too fast. There's all kinds of reasons why a student might want to look at a recording, at the same time that there are all kinds of reasons why you might not want to record the session at all. One thing that you can do is, as Darren was saying, asking students, I'm seeing instructors add surveys to the courses at the beginning of the courses so that they can ask students, you know, are you in a situation where you would have your video camera on? You know, what kind of access to technology do you have? Are you sharing a laptop with someone else in your household? Things like that. And you can ask students these questions and figure out kind of where students are, and then make decisions from there. You can also change your mind in the semester. Like, consistency is important, but flexibility is important. So if you're finding that students aren't participating, maybe you're doing, you know, 20 minutes of lecture in your live session followed by a lot of interaction. Maybe you stop the recording after the lecture portion, and then students might feel more free to do the interactions. And then other students might be more likely to watch it because it's not 75 minutes long. But the thing about recording a portion of it versus all of it, that if you're doing highly interactive synchronous sessions, it also there might not be any value in watching it afterwards. Like, it might be one of those things where you just kind of had to be there in order to get the most out of it. So there also, you might want to just consider, is there value to the recording in general, beyond comfort and your comfort and all of that stuff.
I am teaching this summer, and I have a student in China. She's doing the whole thing asynchronously. So I think you need to think about what's going on. But I just record everything. I had a student who couldn't come to class last night. Her uncle died of COVID. I mean, there's so much going on. I think people will not be able to attend. And in terms of how I do the interaction, as you point out, you know, I cover the meaty content at the beginning, and that's what people watch. When you send it to breakout rooms, that's not recorded. So there are ways to have them engaged, but it's just, for me, it's so much easier. There will be people for numerous reasons that can't, or they're there for part of the time and their internet crashes. So I have not had trouble. And then in terms of, I was always real nervous about the settings too. Just when I set up the first Zoom meeting, I hit record. I don't have to touch anything. It's all saved in the cloud. I don't know anything about file sizes, but I have a 3-hour summer class and students can fast forward to the part they want to see. So, you know, everyone's different, but in terms of, you know, students who maybe would be shy, you know, they put it in the chat. So for me, I err on the side of recording it rather than not recording it, because then there's so much you have to help students who can't be there. So, you know, that's how I handle it. But I appreciate, for student privacy, you may not want to have everything. So maybe just record the first part, but there will be people that will not be there, or there and then left and then come back on their phone. And, you know, it just, we have to be ready for anything, I think.
So Roxanne, when you recorded, I assume you did it in Zoom, right? Did you turn on the HD setting or turn it off? Because that would matter when it comes to the file size.
Isn't this
Sorry.
terrible?
Sorry.
Marty, people just help me. I got the one setting set up and it just does that for everyone. So I can double check on what my settings. I don't think it has to be anything fancy. I guess I don't know what my settings are, but it has worked fine. And
That's
it's
all right.
all on it's on the cloud, you know, so it does take a while for it to become on the cloud, but once it's there all semester. And then just, it has the date and the class session, you know, and the students just click on it. So it, you know, I guess I haven't really focused too much on that. Only that I stop the recording when, you know, they go to a breakout room stuff at the end.
If you, I don't know if other people have questions. I don't want to, you know, maybe I'll ask, you know, my follow-up questions privately with a couple of people at OTL.
I have a question about assignments and assessments. For, you know, obviously for written assessments or for, you know, multiple choice type exams, that's pretty, I think that's pretty easy to do. But if we have a lot of calculations and mathematical equations and stuff like that, that's hard for students to write out. For example, if I were to ask someone to derive something, that's hard to type in Word. It's just hard to do. So do you have any thoughts on that, or how we can go about that?
One of the things that I see instructors do is they'll let students submit the pictures of their handwritten work. Okay. And depending, you know, it can be more or less clear. And the students might already have a preferred app that they use to scan. There's an Adobe Scan. There's a Google Photo Scan, takes pretty good pictures of things. So those are options.
Yeah, that's what they do in the engineering department. I've seen their exams and it works fine. I mean, you wouldn't know that it wasn't done on it would, you know, it looks just like it had been done on a tablet and downloaded. It's fantastic quality.
Excel has a built-in handwriting to formula, and then you could paste it into someplace else as well.
Okay.
Another thing that I've seen people do is they'll have the question with a numerical answer so that Canvas can tell them if the answer is correct. And then they'll have students send me your work if you want partial credit if you got something wrong. So they'll have, there are file upload question types in Canvas quizzes as well. So you could have, enter your, you know, do this calculation, enter your answer, and then upload your work. So that they, just to make grading a little bit quicker. I also know about a tool that will grade whole Excel spreadsheets. If you have students submit spreadsheets to you, there's a tool that you can use to grade those that'll compare your student submitted work to your key document and compare the similarities and automatically mark it and even give some feedback. So if anyone needs to know what that is, I have it.
Great, thank you.
Diane, I had a quick question, and it relates to what you were referencing and looking at the student view. One of the things that I've heard from the undergrads who are not used to taking classes online is that they're overwhelmed with figuring out what's due when, right? And if they're trying to manage 5 classes, making sure that they are staying on target and that their time management is working. Do you think when you do the modules, is that a way for them to be able to keep track, or?
So I think So I think it certainly can help to do some things in modules. Let me pull up my my screen share again so I can show you. Okay, so when you have things in your modules this way, you can add, I've seen people add a text header to say, do this week, and another one that says, you know, start working on this bigger project, because you can link to the same assignment multiple times. So that's one thing that you can consider. I do like having assignments linked directly in the module versus having them linked from pages, because it does give students, you know, directly on the outside of the module, the due date for those assignments and their point values. So I think that can be really, really helpful for students too, that they can look at week 1 and see at a glance, here's when I have things due. I also know that some instructors, and maybe most commonly I see instructors will have things due on the same day of the week. So, you know, you're always going to have a discussion due on Wednesday night. You're always going to have something else due on, you know, you're always going to have a quiz on Sunday night or something like that. So I see instructors try to standardize that a little bit more, but of course it's still hard to know, you know, what due dates people are using in other courses to balance that. So that can help. But I think another thing that can really help is for students to make use of the calendar in Canvas, because the calendar in Canvas, they can turn on all the courses that they're taking currently, and they can see color coded when everything is due. So they'll be able to see when they're going to have like a whole bunch of stuff is going to be all due on the same day. And then they can make those time management decisions about what they need to get done early, because they can't, you know, do everything the same night, although they might try, and I certainly have tried. And that
is it color coded by course when you say that? Okay, yeah. So like one course, everything would be the same color for the course. Okay.
Yes. That can also be really helpful for you as an instructor to turn on all the classes that you're teaching in a semester and look at that calendar view to see, oh, I have 3 major projects due in these 3 different courses all in the same week. And maybe, you know, stagger that a little bit more just to save you the grief of having that heavy grading that you have to do all in the same weekend. So you can consider doing that as well to see how you're, because you can really see, you know, the clustering of those assignments from month to month. It is 10:30, so I think we're technically over time. I'm happy to stay and talk to anybody about anything for any amount of time. I was a women's studies major, so I have no boundaries. So please feel free to stay, but if you need to go, please feel free to go. But thank you for being here. I really enjoyed my session. I really enjoyed working with everybody over the last year and a half, and I'm gonna miss you so much.
Thank you, Diane. Just a quick note, as if people are going, we're going to send all of this out to you as soon as the webinar is uploaded. So don't be concerned if you feel like you missed anything or you're trying to take it all in. I know for me, I was, you know, had my syllabus open at the same time as well, just to be like, ooh, I want to be able to keep track and remember these little details. So, so please don't worry about the resources, but make the most of Diane's mind while we have her here.
I will find the link to that. It's called, there it is, it's called Office Grader. And I think that there is a specific one. So you can do it where it'll grade access files as well. But it's free to use, and it's pretty good. I've tested it in a couple of different ways, and I think I even have a demo video of how it works, so we can make that available too if people want it.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Enjoyed the session. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Roxanne.